the virus and how to fight it. This affected every corner and cranny of our country, and it further exposed the deep inequities that already existed in our country and here at home in our community. I reached back into yesterday at another time of American trial for a touchstone about what today might mean for our city and found this quote: "In this time of difficulty, we Americans everywhere must and shall choose the path of social justice, the path of faith, and the path of hope, and the path of love toward our fellow man." When President Roosevelt, FDR, spoke these words in 1932, he knew that the only path for recovery, whether out of a depression or out of a devastating global pandemic, is the path of helping each other, the path of love toward our fellow man, compassion. And now, today, with these critical American Rescue Plan dollars provided by President Biden and the United States Congress, we have been given that opportunity, the opportunity to help each other, an opportunity we must seize to address some of our most pressing needs. Working with Metro Council, we're using the $388 million from the American Rescue Plan, or we call it ARP, provided to Metro government to address 6 priority areas. Those are public safety, public health, homelessness and affordable housing, workforce development, healthy Louisville and healthy neighborhoods, and then compensation for local government workers who rose to the COVID challenge. This past June, we proposed, and the Metro Council passed, the first round of ARP funds, about $45 million, to address the urgent concerns of the ongoing public health needs related to COVID-19 and eviction prevention to keep people housed. Since then, work groups made up of council members, community members, and members of my administration have worked to identify investment opportunities to address other pressing challenges. Today, we'll be introducing an ordinance that outlines how we propose to spend $262.9 million in ARP funding on the following areas: public safety, homelessness and affordable housing, ongoing public health needs to tackle the pandemic, the efforts of our public employees, and the cost to administer these ARP grants. Now, because public safety is mine, and I think most everybody's #1 concern, we're going to start with that. We're proposing $78 million to tackle public safety challenges, which will build on the whole of government work we are already doing to reduce violence and increase safety in every neighborhood. Among the highlights in the proposal are $35 million for public safety reforms recommended by the Hillard Heinz report and improvements we've learned from the ongoing Department of Justice investigation. These measures will focus on accountability, community engagement and training, with the goal of constitutional and effective policing. $15.8 million to expand current violence deterrence and prevention programs, including increased funding for the Trauma Resilient Communities Initiative and expansion of other programs. We will provide $15 million to provide evidence-based, meaningful youth and young adult programs. This proposal provides $3 million to create a youth transfer processing center, which includes the hiring of 5 court-sworn officers to accept youth detainees from police officers in a more efficient and timely manner. We'll provide $2.9 million to expand to another LMP division, the program we announced earlier this month to deflect some 911 calls to a non-police response. That assumes, of course, that the pilot is successful. And this proposal also includes funding for LMPD technology and equipment and in-depth analysis on guns used in crimes. Every other priority, obviously in our city, depends on getting public safety right. The proposed ARP funds present unprecedented opportunity for us to make not only great improvements, but also great inroads into addressing both prevention of violence and the causes of it too. Next, let's talk about housing and homelessness. We're proposing $89 million to significantly reduce the number of people experiencing homelessness and to build and improve affordable housing in our city. On top of that, an additional $11 million in home ARP funds will be allocated for homelessness or housing programs after a federally required community engagement process and HUD approval. That will bring the new investment in housing and homelessness to $100 million. For the vulnerable unhoused in our community, we are proposing to utilize $32 million on permanent supportive housing and $1.5 million on a safe outdoor space for those not wanting to live indoors. And because the long-term answer to many of our housing challenges is to create and sustain more affordable units, we propose to spend $40 million to build more affordable housing units, $4 million on down payment assistance programs to create new home ownership, as well as $4 million to keep people in their homes through homeowner repair grants. All of this, again, totals $100 million with the HUD home opportunity. It's a big number. I'd also like to mention that both of the last two areas that I've mentioned, public safety, and addressing the housing needs of our community, impact our children and families at JCPS and all of our schools. We work with JCPS daily in partnership to address children's needs inside and outside of school. That partnership is furthered by this ordinance. Keeping our children safe and on a path to success is the goal of our ongoing partnership to collaborate and align our work with JCPS. The funding for the Office of Youth Development will help better coordinate our efforts between JCPS and Metro government to keep at-risk students from going down a path of violence and enhance our collaboration and our communication. In addition, far too many students in JCPS and their families are housing insecure. This ordinance works to address that challenge with proposed funding for both short and long-term housing solutions. And my thanks goes to JCPS for their partnership and their collaboration. And the last area we'll talk about today is premium pay for our workers, which is an eligible ARP expense. We're proposing $21 million to Metro workers and approximately $7 million for public employees at related entities because they showed up and served their city with great distinction when the city needed them and because their city needs them and their critical essential services that they provide. We also believe in that investing in our employees means we're investing in the services that they provide for our residents. Here are the specifics. $5,000 in premium pay will go to essential public safety qualified employees. $1,500 will go to other essential employees, and $500 will go to other employees that don't fit those criteria. Employees who receive the maximum amount of $500, that third category, will receive that amount after showing proof of full COVID vaccination or an authorized waiver. All other recipients, the ones at the $1,500 and $5,000 level, will receive 1/2 of their payment after the ordinance is passed by council, and the other half on June 1st, 2022, assuming proof of full vaccination or authorized waiver. Now, I want to thank our city employees for their work every day, but especially in the early days of the pandemic when it was not clear how we could control the virus and how serious the risk was to their own lives. This ordinance also includes premium pay possibilities for some non-Metro government employees, groups like Suburban Fire, assuming that we can arrive at a cost-sharing formula with their respective local governments, as well as including similar vaccination requirements. I'm deeply appreciative of the partnership with the Metro Council. A lot of work's been going on to see how we could use this transformational funding to tackle some of our community's most pressing challenges. Council members Hollander and Kramer have been critical partners in this day-to-day work that's been going on. and Council President David James, obviously, as well. And now I would like to invite President James to speak.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to first off say to Mayor Fischer that I appreciate all the hard work that your team and yourself have put into this. I know it hasn't been easy. Bill Hollander and Kevin Kramer, the chair and vice chair of the Budget Committee, have really done outstanding work working with the administration. I want to say thank you, Bill. The things the mayor just spoke about are very important. Often you will hear me say that the number one responsibility of government is public safety. I believe that wholeheartedly. And so I'm glad to see such a focus, Mayor Fischer, on the public safety aspect of this and all of it. But I just really wanted to touch on a couple things. When we talk about public safety, when you hear the mayor talk about public safety, it is not simply the police department. And you'll hear Chief Shields and many other police talk about this regularly. We can't arrest our way out of the problems that we have in our community. And we have to look at all of the other things that affect safety in our community. So when it comes to the violence deterrence and prevention program, where we're investing $15.8 million, or the Office of Youth Development and Youth Activities, those are all very, very important pieces of the puzzle that affect public safety in our community. And we have to invest in those things if we want to see things change. I know that I'm very frustrated, the community's very frustrated, the mayor's very frustrated, the council's very frustrated with the level of gun violence going on in our community. And we have to address it from many, many different angles. And so the investment in public safety through the ARP funds, American Rescue Plan funds, is very important. And also want to include the conversation of the police deflection program. The mayor announced earlier this month that we were initiating that with the help of 7 counties and the University of Louisville. And to add another division to that is very important to deal with people in crisis. Because right now, our only response to somebody in crisis is the police department, and that is a very blunt tool to deal with a very fine problem. The last thing that I want to talk about is the Family Recovery Court funding that some of us know as drug court. I think that funding is extremely important in our public safety program and all of the things that we're doing to try to make people safe, because people have to be safe at school, people have to be safe at home, people have to be safe in their neighborhoods. And the Family Recovery Court program is a big part of that. And again, I'd just like to say to Mayor Fischer, thank you very much.
Thank you, President James. Next, I'd like to introduce the Council Budget Chairman, Bill Hollander, and President James referred to this, but I mean, Bill Hollander works nonstop for this city. We were on the phone at 10 o'clock this morning, communicating at 6:30 this morning about the finer details here today, and that's what he does constantly. So Bill Hollander has been really just super integral to getting to us this point today. And Councilman, I just would like to thank you for just your ongoing excellence and commitment to our city. Bill Hollander.
Thank you, Mayor. This is another step along the way of making historic investments in Louisville's future. After the first round of ARP appropriations in June, centering on public health, eviction prevention, and utility assistance, Metro Council went to work on the best way to use these funds to address Louisville's needs. The Budget Committee heard from Chairman John Yarmouth, who is the sponsor of the American Rescue Plan Act. During what is normally a break after passage of Metro's budget, Council President James put us to work, and we held public listening sessions around the county. In those and on an online forum, we received many hundreds of suggestions. In August, we unanimously approved a resolution setting priority areas for the funds, and work groups, each of which involved multiple council members of both parties and members of the administration, went to work sharing information and discussing funding options. There have been more than 15 meetings involving many members, and I thank each of those council members, as well as Margaret Handmaker and Keith Talley, who have been involved in every one of those meetings. Today's announcement is the next step in the process. Every proposal here has been discussed in a work group. The ordinance with these proposals will be discussed in the Budget Committee next week, and we hope to put this remarkable federal funding to work for Louisvillians very soon. There are many excellent proposals here, but I want to comment particularly on a real passion of mine, the proposal for affordable housing and help for our houseless neighbors. In the last 7 years, we've invested $66 million of general fund money in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and Louisville Cares, creating and preserving thousands of affordable housing units. The ordinance we are filing today appropriates $89 million to housing, and a separate resolution accepts $11 million in home ARP funds that the mayor spoke of. Investing $100 million is a force multiplier and far more than our combined investment in the last 7 years. The work group has had extensive discussions about the best way to use this money to serve the needs of the poorest Louisvillians, and that work will continue. In addition, for the first time, we have dedicated $32 million of the total investment to permanent supportive housing for people experiencing houselessness. Many of those neighbors need not only a safe, decent, and affordable place to live, but they need wraparound services for mental health, drug treatment, and more. This is a very significant investment and a direct response to what we are seeing on our streets and what we have heard loud and clear in the council public engagement sessions. I think it's the kind of bold action Chairman Yarmouth and many council members have been calling for. I look forward to discussions over the next few weeks and taking advantage of this really remarkable opportunity for Louisville. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And thanks to the entire council for this partnership. A couple other thanks. I want to thank Margaret Handmaker and her team. Margaret has been leading this ARP effort, thanks to the team over here as well. All of the ARP work group members, as well as Monica Harmon and her team at the Office for Management and Budget for their tireless work running all kinds of scenarios for us to identify challenges and work with community members and council partners to craft unique opportunities and drive this ordinance forward. All right, let's talk about next steps. You've heard about some of them. This proposed ordinance will now go before the Metro Council for discussion, any needed modifications, and approval. We understand that it will be considered by the Metro Budget Committee on November the 4th. Assuming the ordinance passes out of committee, it could be voted on at the full council meeting of November the 11th. Then, the next tranche. It's expected that in January and February, after continued coordination and discussion with the council and community partners, much as if we have done here to date, we will propose the next ordinance or ordinances to address workforce development in healthy neighborhoods. So those are our last two priority areas. Now note that all ARP funds must be spent by December 31st of 2026. So when you're hearing these numbers today, this all isn't going to happen just in this next year. Some may not start right away. Some might go over multiple years. All that will be detailed in the coming weeks. It should also be noted that the spending we are proposing today does not fully address the challenges we have in these areas, our priorities areas, but takes important steps to address them. One of the things I mentioned when we first received the ARP funding of $388 million, a lot of people go, that's a lot of money. And the truth is, it is a lot of money. But when you think about the needs of our city, we have $2 billion in unmet needs just in the infrastructure needs of our city. And that's not even being addressed here with these ARP funds. So when you think about our 6 priority areas, the proposals made in June that was passed, and here today, in early next year, in January and February, it is likely that they will not provide sufficient funds to fully address those challenges. As you all know, we've got a $4 to $5 billion challenge just in providing affordable housing units to cities all over the country. So this reality will be addressed through the deliberations of the work groups and Metro Council, because simple math will show you between the June appropriation of $45 million and today's amount of roughly $263 million, that leaves $80 million left to be appropriated. So the council will take that into consideration as they're looking at these suggestions put forth today in consideration with the needs of our final two areas of workforce development and healthy neighborhoods. So you can anticipate changes in deliberation, and that's what council debate and deliberation is all about. Also, and importantly, we will continue to monitor developments with the President's proposed Build Back Better legislation to see how it may impact areas that we will want to tackle. Areas like broadband and early childhood, universal pre-K, those are big areas within the President's infrastructure plan and the President's Build Back Better plan. So by the time we get to those in January and February, we anticipate that those issues will be resolved at the federal government to provide then some guidance for us in terms of how we want to fill in the blanks with our final allocations. In the meantime, I believe the proposal outlined today certainly reflects a truly pivotal moment in our city's history and development. We've never had this kind of money to work with before. This is possible because of the great partnerships that produced a plan to help our community in truly meaningful ways, and because we work together continuously and tirelessly on a tomorrow that we think will help our most vulnerable while it strengthens our youth and the safety of our citizens. With that, we're happy to take any questions.
Mayor, can you talk about the specifics of what kinds of police reforms this money will help LMPD launch?
Yeah, so that's in here. So think about an accountability and improvement bureau within LMPD that will be focusing on Hillard Heights, reform suggestions, and then some of the learnings that we've had from the Department of Justice as well. Specifically called out in here is doubling where our deflection program is going, additional personnel as it relates to retention and recruiting, building a police department that reflects the makeup of our community, more community policing. Those are some of the areas that are in this budget.
What would you say to residents who may have been hoping for LMP to see a smaller budget allocation in this past budget, and LMP, who might be frustrated with the amount of money that LMPD is getting, another $35 million plus with the technology piece, on top of already one of the largest spending areas in the city budget?
The issue that we hear from the community is they want LMPD to spend the money, invest the money wisely in constitutional policing. People want to see a stronger, impactful LMPD, again, with constitutional policing. When you take a look at the overall money going into this public safety allocation, you see a strong amount of investment in intervention and prevention, more so than traditional law enforcement investment. So there's good balance in here in terms of what we're trying to demonstrate how we can have a safer city here in Louisville.
The $3 million for the youth transfer processing center, how much is this a quote-unquote replacement for the juvenile detention center?
Well, it's not like a replacement in terms of a facility, but the challenge we have right now is the amount of time that it takes when we have a really violent youth offender that does need to be detained, which we don't like to do, but occasionally it has to take place. And so our police officers are spending way more time than what they should be in terms of the process of transferring that youth. So this just that lessens that amount of time on them. It's not a major facility expansion or anything like that.
Can you provide more details on the LMPD technology, particularly the in-depth analysis on guns, youth, and crime? What is that going to look like?
That would be a data fellow from every town for gun safety, where we're matching their investment in that, so it's a relatively lower cost. But to dive really deeply into gun tracing, violent or illegal gun activity as it relates to crime, because oftentimes a lot of these weapons are used multiple times. The other parts of the technology would be related to camera systems, license plate readers, those type of things, and then cloud storage for the web.
Mayor, do you have any update on the LMP shooting that happened overnight?
Nothing beyond what's been publicly reported.
I have a question that's kind of the opposite of the one that was asked earlier. What do you say to people who look at this and say, this doesn't put any more LMPD officers on the streets?
We're addressing those through general fund dollars, so that is a challenge, obviously, with recruitment and retention. So remember, the general fund budget is going to continue to go on as well. So we're addressing all 6 pillars of our reimagining public safety approach that you're familiar with in a way that we think is going to best produce a safer city.
It seems like a lot of these programs are sort of people expenses that the city could want to see continue past December 31st, 2026. So doesn't that really set up a budget challenge for Louisville in 2027?
Darcy, very good question. So we have, Monica, do you have that off the top of your head, the ongoing operations cost if these programs move forward? It's in the neighborhood of $25 to $30 million or so. Yeah, so we're identifying those, so the council is aware of those. So the decision on that, Darcy, was we have the opportunity to really try some significantly new and innovative programs and scale other issues up. And then if they produce, superior results, the council and the mayor at that point in time are going to have to make some decisions on what to move forward with, what to discontinue. But we went into this fully aware of that, but we were not going to not try innovative programs or proven programs at scale because of that issue.
And did you say 25 to 30 million is the expected operation?
If we just kept going with these suggestions. So relative to the overall budget, that's around 5% or so. So it's material, but it's not a game changer or a game stopper.
Can you detail maybe the difference between the employees who are getting the larger bonus and those who are getting the smaller bonus?
Yeah, the larger bonus will be going to departments like corrections, the fire department, police, EMS, sanitation, folks that were, really, face to face on the front line with the pandemic. And again, that will go half after the ordinance passes, and then half roughly in 6 months on June 1st, assuming they're fully vaccinated and they're employed at that period in time.
The vaccine mandate's sure to ruffle some feathers. What are you going to say to people when they push back on that?
It's an incentive. What you see here, we've not been using a stick approach. We've been using an education approach, and now you've got a carrot. And if you don't want to get vaccinated, that's your choice. But you're leaving $2,500 on the table that your family sure could use. All the science is behind us, so we're beyond the point of this being a controversy. Now we just need to get people vaccinated so they can keep other people safe.
It doesn't seem like much of this is big infrastructure projects. Is that because you're confident the federal government is going to pass something separate on that?
That is certainly part of the deliberation on that. We'll know again when we get into January and February, but infrastructure was not a broad eligibility category for ARP funds.
Mayor, if you could talk about, just in general terms, what impact you hope to have on the homelessness issue in Louisville with these initiatives that you're taking?
I'll make a couple comments, and Bill, I'll ask you to weigh in on this. Lawrence, we have never, we have always been so financially constrained in terms of the options that we could put forth with our homeless community. So this is a, capital project intense for the homelessness, from the safe outdoor space to more affordable housing to the permanent supportive housing. So we're going to make a, significant dent, especially with our chronic street homeless is what we're really focusing on here, where we can get people off the street and we can get them into some part of transitioning into more supportive housing, permanent housing, or affordable housing. So we're very optimistic because we've never been able to have a theory on how it could be done before because of our limits on capital. So the capital is in there, And then each one of these solutions also is going to have supportive services relative to mental health challenges, substance abuse challenges, these type of things, so that we can get folks as centered as possible and get them in housing. So this is as Bill talked about, I mean, this is a historically unknown territory for us, so we're very optimistic about it. Bill?
Lawrence, we know that the solution to homelessness is housing, and we've been investing in affordable housing for the last 7 years in the community. This is a whole another level of investment and a much more significant investment. But the supportive housing, the permanent supportive housing piece of this is something new for us. And what we know when we see people on the street is we know they need a safe, decent, and affordable place to live, but we also know that many of them need additional services. They need help with mental illness. They need help with drug addiction. They need help with other kind of problems that they're suffering through. And so this $32 million is really dedicated to addressing those needs as well as a permanent supportive place for them to live. And when we talk to, there's an RFA out on the street right now asking people to respond to that as to how they would make application for that money. But prior to that RFA going out, when we talk to providers in the community, we ask them to think about things that they have not thought about before because they just didn't have the money. They knew we needed it to help our situation, but there was just no money to do it. Now there's money to do it, and I think it's just extraordinarily important.
Councilman Hollander, with the $35 million that is going towards public safety reforms, how does that affect the conversation that happened last night about the expected cost of the DOJ report? You obviously saw some Metro Council members were concerned about taxpayers sort of bearing the brunt of the DOJ investigation.
I think the $35 million is directly addressing what we talked about at the committee of the whole last night, and I'm glad President James scheduled that meeting. To me, if we're going to invest that kind of money in a better police department, and I think we should all want a better police department, better training, better facilities, better technology. If we're going to invest that money over the next 4 or 5 years, in part because of the DOJ review, in part because we just need it, it seems to me to just be incredibly important to do that with ARP money. I mean, Darcy asked a question about what's the ongoing expense of these programs. One of the things we're trying to do to save money in the general fund is to use this ARP money for those investments that we're going to need. And other communities, frankly, that have had DOJ reviews haven't been in this cycle. They haven't had this pot of federal money available to help them make the needed reforms. We do, and that's why that $35 million is in this ordinance.
You want to say anything? And just remember that the $35 million is over 4 years or so. Okay, so, and it's important that we're being proactive in this as we learn new things from the DOJ as well. And if they can help make our police department stronger and more effective and build community trust, that's really what this is all about. So don't look at it as we're investing in the police. What we're doing is we're building community trust as well to create a safer city together. All right, well, thank you all for coming out. I know there's a lot to this, and there's going to be a lot more coming in January and February, the deliberations, and then over the coming years as all of this is invested. Thank you.